Open source provides government a path to self-determination, and it does so in a way that prevents it from entering into these vendor lock-in situations. What that means in general is that the government could potentially decide to fork various open source projects and develop their own communities within their own walls to maintain, support, and augment that software. Of course, there are some legal considerations if they're going to do that. But I think the important takeaway is that the open source companies, the commercial open source companies, are aware that this is a potential, and as such, they always seek to provide the lowest cost, lowest risk, highest quality product in such a way that it would be not beneficial for a government agency or the government as a whole to take that path. I think we need to qualify that in a sense of what's going on in government right now. Currently, we have the government struggling to define its future cloud strategy in a manner that's actionable. This has been complicated by the activities in the vendor sphere to lobby the government to adopt policies and strategies that favor their own product lines. I think there's another kind of foundational component that we have to understand before we get into the trends, and that is that the existing workforce has a defined set of skills. And when we talk about that move to a cloud strategy or cloudish type constructs, that will likely mean picking up some new skills, and that is going to require both time and money. So I think in the interim, what we'll see is the adoption of open source based converged infrastructures, which leverage very familiar components, but also provide a glide path for those people adopting those solutions to move to a wide variety of cloud offerings as they become available in the market. So the other piece that I think is kind of looming out there is this massive shift in the mission of unstructured data. During the ramp up and prosecution of the global war on terror, a lot of very high-end, very expensive SANs were purchased by the government to meet those missions, the mission of unstructured data. These devices are becoming increasingly cost prohibitive to maintain, and I think replacing them with like technology is just out of the question. So where we see some of these open source based storage solutions now hitting the market, I believe for the foreseeable future they will become the workhorse of the unstructured data mission. I would have to say to do as little as possible, and that may seem strange, but I think we have to look at the history of open source in the government to fully understand that. Open source was infused into the government, government IT shops, by the many unnamed sysadmins who just had a mission to do and they needed a technology to get it done. And perhaps there were some budgetary constraints that also kind of pushed them towards the open source type solution. Daniel Reisacker had written a memo several years ago that was both welcome and warranted in that it provided guidance to decision makers explaining how open source software was commercial software. Because at the time we had a lot of decision makers resisting the adoption of open source, thinking that it just wasn't viable for the government to use, or that in fact it was prohibited by the government to use. So his memo was very important at that time, and I think what we've seen as a result of it is open source competes in the same space as other commercial software, and it's really had a remarkable story on that level playing ground. So I don't think that I would make any recommendations to the government to treat open source any differently than it treats any other commercially available solution. I think where the selling point is looking at the the quality, the cost, the risk involved, open source wins.